Tom, would you please reflect upon the Christian existence as an embodied one? You've helped us so much here.
Yeah, I guess I was brought up very much with teaching about the soul, and that the soul was the thing that really mattered, and people in pastoral work would talk about the healing of the soul or the nurture of the soul or whatever. And I kind of know what that means, but in biblical thought, the word soul, which in Greek would be psyche, you take it back to the Old Testament, that regularly translates nephesh, and nephesh is not a non-physical interiority, it's the whole living, breathing person. So we have real difficulty here, because throughout the standard English translations, why are you so heavy, O my soul, and why are you so disquieted within me, as though the only thing that matters is this funny interiority which isn't physical. Interestingly, John Goldingay, in his very creative translation, a very faithful translation of the Old Testament, why are you so heavy, my whole self? It's a whole self. That doesn't ring so nicely in English, but it's what the passage means. So that within the whole, from Genesis to Malachi or Genesis to Chronicles world, human beings are not even embodied souls, because that's not the way they think. We are breathing, we have God's breath in us, and the word breath, ruach in Hebrew, pneuma in Greek, there's a continuum. Those words translate as breath or wind or spirit. And though we, as modern Western lexicographers, say this bit means breath, this bit means wind, this means... I think most speakers in those worlds, when they said ruach in Hebrew or pneuma in Greek, they would think of the whole thing. They wouldn't differentiate in the way that we do. And so the breath which animates our body is the breath which animates our body. And the point is that the body is given to us in order to be the place of celebration, the place of service to God, the place of holiness, the place of service, of all sorts of things. Of course the body will die, unless the Lord returns first and transforms it, a la 1 Corinthians 15, the end. But the whole point of the resurrection of the body is that God wants us to be embodied creatures, and however you think about the continuing existence between bodily death and bodily resurrection, it's the bodiliness which makes us fully human. And I've written in this new book, which I mentioned in the last chapter there, about the way in which we should think of the spirit as holding us in life in between the one event and the other. So the embodiedness, and of course it's contested, because the body gets sick and old and so on. And so healing matters, but the ultimate healing is the resurrection. Is that enough? Are going in the right direction?
Terrific. So, for example, in Romans 12:1, what's the upshot of this understanding of presenting your bodies as a living sacrifice?
Yeah, I mean, for different people this means different things. For some Christian traditions, this actually means a very physical approach to worship, kneeling, flat on your face, processing, whatever, as a way of saying, my whole body is doing this. The danger with so much of us Western Protestants is we just sit there as though the only thing that matters is what our souls are doing, and the body can just slump while that's going on. And then we worry because some in the Catholic or Orthodox traditions go around doing stuff with their bodies, and we think, oh dear, this is works righteousness, which is, get over it. That's not the point. So there are different, but of course, anything you do, like anything that you can think, could be a way of arrogantly saying to God, look at me, aren't I good? But you could do that just as well with what you're thinking or praying as well as what you're doing. So I would say the embodied worship is one way of indicating. Eugene Peterson has a lovely passage about kneeling, which I think I quote in my book on Ephesians, Where you say, when I kneel down, I can't run away, I can't escape, I am there, I am humble, I am expectant, etc. What you do with, as C.S. Lewis says, what you do with your body affects the whole of who you are. In fact, it is the whole of who you are from one point of view. But then, for Paul, there is no hard and fast line between worship as what you might do in a church gathering and the worship of what you do in your daily Christian service, whether it's teaching, exhorting, giving, helping, etc. There is a cheerful continuum, because the latter is also part of your worship and the former is also part of your service to the wider community.
So in 2:12, Paul continues by saying, be metamorphosed by the renewing of the mind. Why is it that Paul thinks that the mind needs to be renewed, and how might that occur?
Yeah, I think that as in Philippians, which is the other great passage about the mind, Paul has this sense of what you think affecting what you do and who you become. And so, as I said a couple of times, learning how to think as well as what to think, and so I would want to bring in Philippians 1 and 2 particularly there, and then because you can see spurious patterns of thinking. One of the saddest things I had to do when I was Bishop of Durham was go and visit one of my own clergy who was in prison for some horrible things he'd done, and when I visited him, one of the questions I had for him, which really troubled me, was, how did you even think that this was going to be okay to do this stuff? And he told me a story of the little steps by which he'd done a bit of this and a bit of that, and it didn't seem to matter, so he just, one thing led to another. And you know, it's the thinking, and the thinking has to be brought up short and be told, no, this is crazy, I must not go this way, I perhaps need to go to a counsellor or spiritual guide for some help to get out of this mess, because I don't want the world to squeeze me into the mould. But again, the Lewis point about the devil does his best work not by putting ideas into our minds, but by keeping them out. So learning to think, finding the wise, mature, many-sided way of thinking through an issue and applying it to oneself. And if we don't do that, I mean, this is the difference, one of the many differences between vice and virtue. For vice, you don't have to think. You just have to go with the flow. And it'll happen. It'll get you. For virtue, you have to think. What should I be doing in this situation? How can I practice that so that when the moment comes, I'll do it right? That doesn't happen by accident. Yeah.